Okay, welcome to the March 27th NID board meeting, and we'll call to order. Please join us in the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Division 1? Here. Division 2?
Here.
Division 3? Here. Division 4?
Here.
Division 5?
Here. Okay, so we have public comment for items that are not on the agenda.
I didn't see the agenda, but hopefully some of this is not on the agenda. Don Conan from the South area. And, a couple things have already been answered for me, but one of the things I was wondering with this problem with the water, and that is the state of California has makes NID dump water in for the fish. And I'm wondering if you can get a water situation, if you can get a waiver from the state. Both the Shasta and Oroville are higher than they were last year and seem to have quite a bit of water coming in. So that was just one of the suggestions I had, and hope something we can do. Now, I'm on Pearl Barnes Ditch that picks up water off of Wolf Creek, and it seems that during the first part of the year, there's no problem with water from our ditch, and then towards the end of the year, I understand that I need to dump water in Wolf Creek so it can be picked up, but it doesn't seem to affect us very much down there because the spring runoff. So I'm just wondering what 20% cutback would do, especially on our ditch where it's not going to make any difference. Probably. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other public comment? Seeing none, we'll go to our agenda, the consent agenda. We have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Any public comment on the consent agenda? Seeing none? Okay. Roll call, please.
Division 2?
Yes.
Division 3?
Aye.
Division 4?
Aye.
Division 1?
Yes.
Division 5?
Yes. Okay, we'll go to general orders and an amendment to the fiscal year 2024 capital improvement program budget.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Sandra Dunlap, Director of Finance.
Bring the mic to, yeah.
Thank you. So we're bringing forward this, it's a routine item. Last year, we brought it at the second meeting in March as well, so we're right on track. Requesting approval for a CIP budget amendment for 2024. So part of our process, as you know, we're working on the 2023 year-end audit. So we've been reconciling all the CIP projects, working closely with the department. And after reviewing all of those, there are a few items that we need to roll forward because they did not finish last year or we did not receive them. There's a couple vehicles on there. So I'll point you to the second page on the report. There's a nice little chart there at the bottom that is a summary of what we're asking for. So you can see there are 4 items in the capital fund, the water fund 15, and then we also have 3 items in fund 17 that are related to watershed projects. I don't know if you have any specific questions on those, if this is, again, just kind of a routine true up of last year rolling into.
Straightforward to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right,
Yep.
yeah. Seems very straightforward, and thank you.
Well,
You think?
It's great.
It is so great. You are so great.
Well, thank you. We have a great team and great departments to work with, so. And Corey, our new budget analyst, worked heavy on this with our CIPs and all the departments, so that was really great.
Have we met Corey, the new budget manager?
I don't know that you have, but he is absolutely wonderful. He comes to us from a city in Arizona, so he has lots of budgeting experience. And Ms. Sandra will be going out on maternity leave here at the end of April, and so we'll see a lot of Corey in this upcoming budget season. So I'm confident we are in great hands with budget.
Congratulations. Yeah. Excellent.
Well, that's all I had.
Any comment from directors? Public comment? Seeing none, roll call would be
I think you
Haven't had a motion yet.
motion.
I'll make a motion. I move that we adopt resolution 2024-09, authorizing an amendment to the fiscal year 2024 CIP budget of $844,678 to carry forward unspent appropriations for fiscal year 2023 CIP projects in the amount of $497,714, and two, to increase the CIP budget, project budgets, adding appropriations in the amount of $346,964.
I'll second that.
Okay.
I think I was reading that.
No, I know, yeah, you have to read.
Roll call, please.
Division 2,
Aye.
Division 3,
Aye.
Division 4,
Aye.
Division 1,
Yes.
Division 5.
Yes. All right, let's get to 4B, the emergency declaration.
Let me take it.
Yeah, I think we can tag team it, but why don't you start us off?
Morning, board, staff, and public. I'm Chip Close, Director of Water Operations.
Chip? Get your
Turn your mic on.
mic on.
Okay. So, as you may have heard, we have experienced a bit of a situation here that has put the water supply in the coming months at a bit of a constraint. In early February, we were notified from PG&E that the South Yuba Canal had experienced a failure. Basically, what happened is we had a water slide, or a landslide that took out the South Yuba Canal in the upper reaches of PG&E's infrastructure. As y'all are aware, we recently purchased the South Yuba Canal, but we don't own the whole thing. The first mile of it is PG&E's facility to own and operate and maintain. Unfortunately, that's the section that slid off the mountain. They could no longer get water to us through that facility. So in turn, they went to their backup supply, which is coming out of the Spalding 2 powerhouse into the Drum Canal. They then rediverted back to NID, into our South Yuba Canal and into the Bear River. And that worked fine for about a month. And then we got word in early March that that powerhouse suffered an extreme failure that is limiting water supply into the canals. In fact, they can't get any into the canal. So now we're in a scenario where NID cannot get our water in either the South Yuba Canal or the Drum or Bear River. Those are our two main sources of supply. And if you'd like, I can throw up a map and we'll walk you through how that flow works. Chris, if you can put up number 1 up there. These are the maps that we utilized early in the plan for water process. And what you'll see on the map there, the top right-hand corner is our upper alpine storage at Jackson Meadows Reservoir. And if you follow the lines there, the water comes out of Jackson Meadows and into Milton through the Bowman Tunnel, supplies that upper country water into the Bowman Reservoir. And from there, we transport that water from Bowman through the Bowman-Spalding Canal into Lake Spalding. Now, Jackson Meadows and Bowman, French, Foshery, Sawmill, they all go into Bowman and then go into Spalding. Spalding is a PG&E-owned facility. The rest of those are ours. This has worked for 100 years. We've had a long-term relationship between NID and PG&E, and it's been successful. However, this particular emergency scenario is unprecedented. We've never run into anything like this. The reason this is such a big event for us is that once the water gets into Lake Spalding, we then have to convey it to our lower reservoirs, our Scotts Flat and our Rollins. If you can put up the next slide, please, map number 2.
Chip, the Milton Bowman Tunnel, how
Yes.
long is
Oh, boy. I don't know, I'd have to measure it out.
A few miles.
It's a long
And then there's one
time.
right outside of Fuller also.
Correct.
So it's been
We have some on the South Yuba Canal. Back in the day when they built these facilities, they built quite a few tunnels.
It can be done.
Can be done. Okay, so this slide here shows you the top right corner is Lake Spalding. The little pink houses there are powerhouses. So what you'll see at the base of Lake Spalding is the Spalding 1 and 2 powerhouse are both right there. Spalding 2 brings water into the South Yuba Canal. Spalding 1 brings it into the Drum Canal. So what you see on this slide is the yellow line is the South Yuba Canal brings our water into Scotts Flat Reservoir. The green line there is PG&E's Drum Canal, which brings water into the Bear River system and fills Rollins. Now, neither one of those canals nor the Bear River is accessible to us. They need those powerhouse conduits to get the water into the system. The reason that's important to NID is obviously transporting our upper alpine water across, but more importantly, Scotts Flat and the Cascade Canal off the South Yuba Canal is our main source of water for Nevada County. That includes all Nevada County drinking water treatment plants. That includes all of the Nevada County canals. So this is a scenario where we are concerned that if this outage were to extend many months down the road into July, we're really going to struggle on water supply for the Nevada County side. The other side,
Pardon me, but so this does not impact Placer County at all?
no, I'm getting to that.
Oh, okay.
Be next. So right now I'm just,
But I just,
yes, we'll get there. So what we're going to do is we're currently utilizing runoff. We're thankful Mother Nature is supplying some runoff. We've got some rain in the forecast. We're going to live on that as long as we can. We anticipate Scotts Flat is full and spilling. It should continue to do so for another week or two. And then as we start into irrigation season, we'll start pulling demands off that reservoir, pumping that water to our customers. It will come off a spill. We will live on storage as long as we can for Nevada County customers. On the Placer County side, the Placer County customers get their water supply from our Rollins Reservoir. That's their main source of supply. There is no way to get imports into Rollins Reservoir, so in a similar scenario as Scotts Flat, we're going to be supplying our Placer County customers with stored water in Rollins. Rollins is currently full. Again, if we get rain, it will help bolster that storage into the coming months. But we have run some forecasts, and we show that Rollins Reservoir will rapidly drop as we move through April, May, and into June. The reason we're asking for a declaration of emergency is that we do forecast that if this current outage should extend into July, Rollins Reservoir will basically be to levels we really haven't seen in a long time, basically like 77 drought type levels. So we are.
when you said rapidly drop at Rollins, can you kind of quantify that?
Sure. So our team has forecasted a couple different scenarios. We've run a dry scenario. We've run a medium forecast scenario. What we see is by the end of June, in a dry scenario, Rollins will be at 23,000 acre feet.
End of June.
End of June.
That's if, with a 20% voluntary cutback.
This is taking average demand numbers and average inflows.
Not the.
Being extremely
This is
Oh, okay, got
a
it.
conservative scenario. That 23,000 acre feet is fairly low. I mean, keep in mind that right now we're at 65,000 acre feet. So that shows you how rapidly it drops.
We're including PG&E water that you now buy from them that's stored in.
This is overall storage.
Overall storage.
This is overall. Keep in mind, though, that 23,000 acre feet number I just gave you does not take into account the amount of sedimentation that has built up in the reservoir. So realistically, that's another 11,000 acre feet off of that number. So we're really at about 10,000 acre feet.
So back to the question he mentioned, PG&E water, their power, what do they do with Rollins in this scenario?
So we have a coordinated operating agreement with PG&E. A portion of the water that's in Rollins is theirs, a portion of it is ours. And per our contract, we are allowed to buy some of that water, and we plan on fully buying what we can to preserve our storage allotment in Rollins. Some of that is going to be reserved for PG&E to deliver to PCWA as well.
So that's a total of 10,000 acre feet.
For us, that we.
No.
Oh, a total of
Five.
10,000 between the two of us?
Correct.
So I gave you the worst-case conservative scenario. It's rather alarming. PG&E has indicated to us they anticipate these repairs being done by June 8th, and we hope they stay on that path. We have calculated our storage supply for June 8th. We've done a forecast, and again, the dry conservative scenario shows us at 38,000 acre feet on June 8th. So low, but manageable, okay? So again, we are doing everything we can to encourage and help PG&E fast-track these repairs so that we can...
These repairs, which repairs are we talking about? There's two different issues.
Yes, so we'll back up. So PG&E's powerhouse, the Spalding 1, that puts water into the drum and into the bear is where they are focusing most of their efforts at this current
So
time.
nobody's working on the canal.
No, they are.
The South Yuba Canal is a little bit of a different scenario. They are working on it. They have ordered the pipe, at least that's what we've been told, and the couplings. The problem with that one is there's a long lead time on getting the pipe and the fittings. But regardless, they are working on it, and they anticipate having the repairs for that one done later in the season, probably in the fall.
They have asked the manufacturers of the pipe to expedite the delivery. We have not heard back, but we have been in constant communication with PG&E, and they're aware of how important it is to us that these projects are expedited.
How big is that pipe?
Well, I don't
know.
Large pipe.
It's a large pipe.
The reason why they are focusing their efforts on Spalding 1 is if they get that one fixed in a timely fashion, that allows them to supply water not only to the Drum and the Bear River, but it also has a bypass location where they can put water back into the South Yuba Canal as well. So if they fix the Spalding 1 powerhouse, they can then supply all conduits again.
Is that their concern, or generating power is their concern?
Their concern is water supply. If you read our coordinated operating agreement with them, the number one priority for water use in the agreement is consumptive use.
How much can they divert to South Yuba? How many CFS?
They have been able in the past, using this bypass route, to meet our full demands of 75 CFS. So we're cautiously optimistic, but again, it's really all about that June 8th target date. We really do need to hit that date. It's after that date that our storage supplies in Scotts Flat and Rollins become an issue. Now, I spent a little bit of time giving you an update on Rollins. I want to back up to Scotts Flat for a second. The storage supply at Scotts Flat is not quite as bad as far as how far that reservoir is going to drop. We currently anticipate by that June 9th date, we will have roughly 41,000 acre feet, which is not terrible for Scotts Flat. The problem with Scotts Flat is we can't get the water out of Scotts Flat and to the entirety of our customer base because without the South Yuba Canal, we have also lost the Cascade Canal. So we are going to be running on emergency pumping systems to pump water out of Scotts Flat and back up into our canal system, and those pumps have limited capacity. We know, we are fairly confident that we can pump the demands of our customer needs, not only the treated water, but the irrigation water demands up until, we're hoping, June. Once June is passed, demands will really pick up, and we may run short of supply on some of the far reaches of the irrigation canals, and we may need to rotate services. Again, that's if this gets extended beyond the June deadline. So that's where we're at. Asking customers to conserve will bolster our storage and will allow more flows in the canals for a longer period of time. So we thought it'd be prudent to ask for this conservation. The declaration of emergency also allows for additional projects in case we need to find some other alternative ways to pump. We have studied some of those. They're very, very costly. And they come with a lot of environmental conditions that we don't know what they would be at this point in time. So we're still investigating that side of it. But right now, the plan of attack is to utilize the storage we have on hand to carry us through the June 8th deadline and ask for our customers to conserve as much as possible. We're asking for 20%. It is voluntary, but please, we ask you do what you can. Just like we did in the drought, we're asking customers, our irrigation water customers, if they want to cut back on their miner's edge purchases, that we will be gladly giving them a credit for the amount they're crediting back. We will get them back their allotment next year when water supplies return.
To that, oh, go ahead.
Oh, ask a question.
To that, if someone wanted to cut back 20%, they get a 20% credit. If they wanted to cut back, if they could cut back 50%, are we willing to go to 50% credit?
Rich, we'll take whatever cutback we can get. Unfortunately, though, because of the way we orifice our deliveries, it has to be an allotment that matches an orifice size. So in other words, if you buy 1 inch of water and you want to reduce voluntarily, this year, your only option is to go to a 1/2 inch because that's the only 2 orifice sizes we offer.
Right.
But we would be glad to take.
We're going to round off to our orifice size.
Correct.
Yeah.
How about larger orifice sites?
If they call in, we can work out what sizes are available and discuss that.
Those are more choices, right?
Correct. Once you get above about 2 inches, we start custom cutting the orifice plates.
I have a question. Oh, you guys go ahead.
So I'd like to jump backwards. And so first off, I have really broad, significant foundational problems with what's being asked. Overall, I think we can get somewhere that makes sense, but there's some blank check things that don't seem to line up with the way I read that. So I just want to go back to February 14th, your statement. So when we decided to do surplus water. So I'm going to read this. I hope that it was captures what you stated accurately. I think it did. They got to do it, so. So you stated, you say, so we're in great shape there, talking about the current conditions and the reservoirs. Our anticipated October 15th carryover storage is 167,000 acres, which is a really good number. Our 8 to 14-day forecast includes a lot of precipitation. As I mentioned, our snowpack on February 1st was low, but has made marked improvements since we took the survey, and we estimate it to be around 73%. Reservoirs are full. So taking all this into consideration, staff is recommending surplus declaration through the adoption of resolution 202407. I didn't spend a lot of time talking about surplus, but I can describe that briefly. Any surplus declaration is any time you have water in excess of the needs of your customers within the service area boundary. When you have water in excess of that, you're able to make surplus declaration that allows you to potentially sell water outside those boundaries. We've historically had a surplus here at NID. We're very fortunate in that fact, and we have some surplus water contracts with some local municipalities. City of Grass Valley, Nevada City are both surplus water contracts. So they rely on our surplus water to supply them with this one. So it's an important declaration and good to make when we can, and it also avails us to make other outside water districts, if possible. And then Director Hall asked you a question. She said, have we ever provided municipalities outside the district with water without the surplus declaration? You respond, yes, the recent droughts we've done so. But we put some conditions on their supply, basically limiting their supply, asking them to cut back and abide by all of our conservative regulation or conservation regulations. My question is, the resolution that you have in front of us states that on or around 2/9, this is 5 days prior to your statement, you were made aware of the damage to the South Yuba Canal on the PG&E owned portion, one of our 2 main arteries of the system. It also appears that FERC made PG&E aware of maintenance issues on the other artery back in August of 2023. Maybe different issues, but they were made aware that that powerhouse needed maintenance. So those 2 arteries, one's broken and one has already been told to PG&E that by FERC they needed to fix something. So with those things in mind, and knowing that the snowpack was currently below average when you made your statement, one artery totally severed and the other one needing repair, why would we rush to do a surplus water declaration, A, and B, why isn't that the first thing you're asking us to rescind right now?
So a couple items. I don't know that we were made aware of the issue on the South Yuba Canal until sometime after February 9th. We're kind of backing that date in based off of.
I'm just reading what you provided the public.
Yeah, so in the resolution, it states that the issue occurred on or around February 9th. We're not exactly sure of the date. We didn't learn of it right away because it's such in a remote location and it's extremely difficult to get to. They have to helicopter in to get to that particular.
So what date were you made aware of it?
I don't think it.
Yesterday.
Yeah, yes, you did.
So your answer was 2/9. I have it in a text.
I said we think it occurred on or around 2/9. The second item you brought up related.
No, we're not done with the first item. So that was on or around 2/9. We're now a month and a half later, almost 2 months later. As soon as you found that out, wouldn't we remove the surplus declaration or at least talk about it?
So if I may, we had discussions with PG&E following the first notification of the South Yuba Canal failure. PG&E indicated to us at the time that full delivery could be made through the bypass into the South Yuba Canal through Spalding 1. We spent much of last year doing this. We were confident that they would continue to do so. They had made no indication to us at that point in time they had any worries over Spalding 1.
And you weren't aware of the FERC statements to them from August 2023?
We do not get their FERC reports.
Yeah, I just, even, let's say that Spalding, nobody knew any issue was there. If one of the 2 main arteries is severed, as soon as we know that, I'm not saying stop water deliveries, why have the surplus declaration?
So the surplus declaration was made based on our urban and ag water management plans, and there are thresholds in which you meet before you can make those declarations. The reason we make them when we do is so we can send the appropriate billing out to our customers and to let the local municipalities prepare for their water season. Now, we did that early. We had ample water supply. We met all the thresholds that are called out for our urban and ag plans, and so we followed the planning document. It wasn't until after those declarations that all this came about. So, I mean, I get where you're at and I get your concern. But given the information we had at the time, we made the call.
So knowing that, the information you have today right in front of you, if there was no surplus water declaration, would you be asking us to give one today?
No.
So why are we not talking about rescinding it?
So what you'll see in the resolution is the resolution basically stops all new or increased water sales. That will be surplus sales. They're not allowed per the resolution. The 2 that I think we're all beating around the bush here is the Nevada City and Grass Valley.
Which you told Director Hull that we have and we can continue to sell to them without this declaration.
It is a surplus water contract that we have with them. So there is some legality in pulling that back.
But you're asking for an emergency declaration.
Yes, we're asking,
It seems to supersede what we did in February, and I don't understand how we would move forward by not backing out. We don't have a surplus water supply today, so why are we pretending that we do?
we don't, and the resolution itself eliminates any further new sales or increases for this year, so
I
we have
asked
locked
this
it up.
yesterday, and I'd like an answer at some point. If we were to cut Nevada City and Grass Valley by 50%, like you stated we've done in the past,
Yeah.
what is the lost revenue to NID?
It's somewhere in the neighborhood of $550,000.
Okay, so we're talking about a massive sum of money, and to me, it seems to be the only reason we're not talking about rescinding.
To me, it's a public health and safety issue.
Well, I'm not asking us not to give them water. We're not their main source of water.
Yes, we are.
Little Deer Creek,
No, they run out of water
in June.
Yeah.
Okay, so your hope is that this fix is gonna happen by PG&E in June, otherwise, catastrophic events happen, you just stated that.
Correct.
So why don't we rescind this and come back in June, see where we're at with the repairs, and then make a decision with all of the data in front of us? Right now, you're just guessing. All I can tell you is what's happened is both arteries have been severed, and
Yes.
we're still acting like they're not.
So the emergency resolution put forth addresses the items in the surplus declaration that are above and beyond, outside of serving water to Grass Valley, Nevada City.
Public health and safety.
Right, so it's only holding those items related to public health and safety that would be allowed for in the surplus declaration. Outside of that, it removes all of the other items, increased water sales, increased connections, or new connections.
Or selling outside of district for any other reason.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay.
The other item I did want to quickly address, because I know this has been coming up a lot in the public, is related to that FERC letter for PG&E. I did have the opportunity to reach out to PG&E, and it was a standard maintenance letter related to painting of some of the valves related to the pressure reducing valve that has nothing to do with this current situation they're in. So we also get those types of letters. FERC inspectors come do routine inspections of the powerhouses, and that's what that letter was regarding. It's not related to the situation they're currently experiencing at all.
Karen has.
Thank you for clarification. I had assumed that the emergency declaration comes off the table because of the water surplus declaration comes off the table because of the emergency declaration, so thank you for clarifying. I also thought it would be helpful for Chip and Jennifer to comment and reflect on the effectiveness of prior emergency declarations relative to drought, when the state has implemented drought restrictions for the state and which we have abided by. Because one of the things that I remember from that is the tremendous impact that the combination of voluntary conservation on the part of our customer base combined with tighter management of the canals made a tremendous difference on how much water was saved without really creating an undue impact to individual customers. So I thought you could maybe reflect on that.
Yeah, sure. During the 2015, 2016 timeframe, during the peak of the drought, we were mandated to achieve a 36% reduction on our water usage. It was geared towards treated water usage. And I'm happy to report our customers did great and we hit that target. That's a major savings. On our irrigation water side, we asked for something similar to what we're doing today, was voluntary reductions of that 20%. And we got quite a bit of performance. I think overall we saved about 15%, but 15% on 120,000 acre feet is a lot of water. So our customers have shown that they are willing to respond in these circumstances, and we do appreciate their efforts.
You describe, and my understanding was when we declare a surplus, we always have the right to come back due to circumstances.
Well, we did it a couple of years ago.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When the water disappeared into the ground.
Into the ground, right.
Okay, so we have that flexibility. And it's always use your best experience and historical knowledge to make a decision And if it changes, you make that adjustment, not a problem. Rotation, could you explain rotation on how that would work throughout a system?
So, it's a little early to go into all the details, but we have done an analysis of which canals could potentially run short. We have studied the canals that have no in-home usage so that we don't affect the public health and safety side of it. And, we've determined there's a couple of canals that if we get past this June date, we will be rotating. And right now, we think that looks like 3 days on, 3 days off, something similar to that. But again, if we get further down that road and it looks like those are being needed, we'll pull the crew together, we'll have open discussions, and we'll have discussions with our customer base too to see what works best for everyone.
Everybody notice. So,
What about someone who could cut back 50% until June, but then would have to back it up to maybe only 10 or 20% afterwards, or 10%?
Yeah, that one's a little more difficult because reorificing for a portion of the year becomes a problem for billing purposes. We have staff that can go out and shut a box off, and we'd be glad to do that.
It's costly.
It is costly, but, you know, we're asking for conservation of water, and that's the most important thing at this point in time.
Could you do something like somebody shut, I mean, we have a pond, so for us, we could fill the pond in 3 days, you know, and cut back on our usage and shut it off for a couple of days. My neighbors run gravity, so they're continually needed 24/7. But a rotational could be due where somebody just shuts their whole box off for 2 or 3 days out of the week.
Right.
Because they don't need water.
Initially, starting the season, we're asking folks to use as little as they can because we're monitoring the end of the canal and making real-time adjustments. So if you're a typical user who uses a 1 miner's inch and just lets it flow 24/7 and you don't necessarily need that much, if you can limit that flow or cut your box back, we will make the adjustments on the canal based on the tailwaters, and hopefully that's how we get our savings.
I'd like to understand the financial implications of this. It doesn't appear, as I've read, that we're going to institute drought as we have in the past. So obviously, there's going to be a huge impact to recreation, hydro, and water sales. So I'm wondering, at what point will we have a better understanding of that?
I'll kind of break it down into categories. So related to hydropower revenue, there will be an impact. The majority of our larger powerhouses, they are on the power purchase agreement, and that revenue is paid based off of availability of the powerhouse, so there will be no impact. We're currently coordinating with the 3 powerhouses that have separate contracts through the JPA that then resells the power. We are coordinating with them related to not being able to provide the power, but also related to basically conservation resource credits, as to whether or not we need to purchase those offline. We think we're coming to a good resolution related to those 2 issues. Once that question is resolved, then we'll come up with some definite numbers. Related to water, we will be able to make some more specific projections once we have a better understanding of how effective the voluntary conservation is and how many folks call in with wanting to reduce their allocation for the year. So we will expect to see a revenue hit on that as well. Typically, in volunteer situations, you have more people that just voluntarily conserve water as opposed to call in and formally reduce their allocation. And then related to recreation, the biggest hit on recreation will be at Rollins Lake. The boat slips will be non-functioning fairly quickly into May, depending on how hot it gets. And so instead of having people bring in their boats and then pull their boats back out in 2 weeks at a moment's notice so they don't get beached into the mud, we are telling them that we would like them not to bring them till later, so we will be reducing revenue on that as well. how about for the next meeting, we'll do a better effort on kind of projections and see where we think we're gonna fall once we get some of these questions answered. And then there's also gonna be a hit on the expense side. Pumping is extremely expensive, especially associated with diesel, purchase of diesel gas, because we would have to be pumping 24 hours a day. So we have been starting to crunch those numbers. As Chip alluded to, we are also looking at if there's any alternative method to get water out of the South Yuba River into the South Yuba Canal. Everything we've ran so far in coordination with PG&E is extremely expensive. You'd be looking at well over $300,000 just for diesel costs alone, let alone pipe rental, pump rental, and manning the stations 24 hours. But we're also coming up with a project cost for that we'll bring forth. At this point, as long as PG&E is keeping on track, it wouldn't be worth doing that particular item. If we start getting a sense that their schedule is slipping, and we do speak to them twice a week, then we would look more seriously at alternative pumping sources. But in the meanwhile, to gear up to answering those questions, we are doing, Mr. Roderick has been doing some work on his end, as well as PG&E is doing work on their end, working with different vendors related to pumps as well as temporary piping.
What was the original date PG&E
Ricky's up
gave
next.
you?
Hey, Trevor, Ricky's been waiting for quite a while here. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I do have kind of a list, so I'm gonna, I've been taking notes as we've been going through. So, I too am concerned about the costs and if we have an opportunity to get any cost recovery from PG&E. I'm looking at Dustin. Is that, do you think, a possibility?
Exploring that as well.
You are exploring it. And so,
FEMA?
A disaster declaration, to my knowledge, has not been made yet, so.
how do we get that one? That was on my next list, is how do we get that? That's the feds, right? So we
Yeah.
have to go to our congressperson and seek a disaster declaration?
There's a federal declaration under the Stafford Act. There's also a local Cal OES type declaration that could also be made. You tend to, a very significant event, they happen in tandem, but you can explore both independently, and we can do that. We've been in
Is that something
discussions.
we're thinking about doing? It seems like that would be good insofar as we could maybe get some cost recovery out of it.
Especially if we put in some temporary pumps and start pumping water.
Well, yeah,
Start
so then-
sucking the money really fast there.
Well, so then, adding on to that is, I presume each one of these departments, everybody is keeping close tabs on the costs as it relates. What is this costing the district to do this?
We have opened up a tracking number, so all costs and effort will be tracked into that number, so that if there is an opportunity to seek reimbursement either from the state or the federal government, we will do so.
Is there any, option to get any kind of reimbursement from PG&E?
That is what Dustin was referring to.
Oh, that's
We
what
are
you're referring to.
exploring, yes.
Okay.
Oh, go ahead.
Thanks. I just have a couple other things.
Live next.
Thank you. When you talked about, Chip, that we're gonna be pumping this, that, and the other thing until June, and then hopefully things will go back to normal, I'm curious, because we too have, infrastructure issues. What are the age of those pumps? Are we certain that they're gonna work 24/7 all the way until June or the end of June, or whatever it's gonna be required?
A great question. So as soon as we found out about this issue, we sent our maintenance teams out to perform the preventative maintenance on those facilities. Specifically, there's two main pump stations we'll be using. One is Anchor Lane off of Greenhorn, and that's a fairly old system, I want to say 70s, but it doesn't get used a bunch, therefore it doesn't have a lot of hours on it, and they're connected to the electrical grid, pretty reliable pumps. We have pulled a backup generator out there in case of any power grid failures to keep the water flowing, so we're pretty comfortable with that. The second pump station is the Siphon Lane pump station. This is fairly new. I don't know if y'all remember, we spent a good chunk of change on this emergency backup facility. It pumps water from the DS Canal into the Cascade Canal. Unfortunately, there was no power out there, so it utilizes diesel generators to run these things. It's fairly costly. The good news is they're new Cummins diesel motors. They don't have a lot of hours. New station, it should be fairly reliable. We did have an injector failure, but we sent the Cummins rep out just last week. They have gone through all the motors, done all the tests, and they gave us the green light. Things should be ready to rock.
And how many of our powerhouses are down because of this? There's lost revenue in terms of not being, the power purchase agreement.
Yeah, those are fine. Mhm.
Oh, we're good, okay.
So it's 3 powerhouses that will experience revenue reductions.
That's right. Now, going back to this request for voluntary reductions, I've heard we're gonna ask for that, and then there's been some chatter here about reorificing. Is that like customer calls and says, can you come out, I'll do this voluntary reduction? Is that the only way we can keep track, or is sending somebody out and reorificing their box? Or is it possible for someone to just simply use less?
Both.
So I called Chick and asked the same question
Oh, you
this
did?
week. And
Okay.
we went all through it because of my own
Yeah, your own
situation.
situation.
So he can explain.
Yeah,
Well, I would like it to be explained not only for me, but
Sure.
for anyone who's listening out there.
So basically, if our irrigation customers specifically, if they just cut back a little bit, we appreciate that. It's virtually impossible for us to see that or know how much it is on an individual customer basis. On the flip side, however, if you reorifice your purchase amount, let's say you're buying 1 miner's inch and this year you agree to go to 1/2 a miner's inch, that we know will come out where we'll reorifice your box, we'll reduce your bill.
I see.
And then we'll allow you to go back to that 1 miner's inch next year when situation, if the water year is a normal water year.
Okay, and then how are we, I've been getting some kind of cranky calls from people saying, how are we supposed to know this? Like, if we don't have an internet connection or, whatever, are we gonna get letters, asking for this voluntary reduction? Are we gonna notify each customer?
Yes.
By mail?
So we developed a letter that briefly goes over the scenario we're in, asks for reductions, and highlights the measures we're asking for. That will be mailed directly to all our irrigation customers tomorrow.
Okay.
That was my question.
Yeah.
I had a couple of comments already about getting the word out, what's
Right, how are we all supposed
I
to
don't know, we'll find out today,
We'll
won't we?
be sending an individual letter with all the information related to reducing your allocation formally, if that's what you choose to do.
Okay.
So then,
Oh,
can I just? build
Yeah, go ahead, build on that, but
on
I still have a couple more
that?
questions.
Then I will limit
Thank you.
So I'm wondering, kind of the overall communication strategy moving forward. So I think it's great to send this letter. I think you've done a great job with the press releases. But it seems that as time goes on, people are gonna be more anxious to know what's happening with those repairs.
Mhm.
And so can you talk about the
plan.
the plan for public communication?
Mhm.
So anytime we need specific action or something changes that impacts the individual customer, we'll send an actual letter. Actual letter sending is extremely expensive because we're talking about
Yeah.
thousands of customers. Outside of that, we'll continue to do press releases. We'll keep information available on our website as well as via social media. And then we've been working also with our partners at Nevada County, as well as the cities, so that they can be disseminating information as well. And then this issue is broader than just NID. It's also impacting PCWA as well as South Sutter Water District. So all 3 of our teams are also communicating.
And Director Hull, I would point you to resolve paragraph 3, where the Board of Directors, under the proposed resolution, is directing the district staff to publicly notice via the district's website and other communication outlets to actively communicate with district customers regarding this emergency and the actions, including water conservation measures authorized herein. So that's part of your recommended action.
I want to thank some of the news organizations that are online right now. So,
Yeah, especially UBNet. They did a lot of digging, and they had some help, but they did a lot of digging.
KCRAs are also.
Yeah, the
Well.
CBS, I got a call from CBS, I keep sending them along, but, okay, let's see. I lose my train of thought. Karen, what was your question? Oh, it's about public stuff.
Yeah. Sorry.
That's okay, that's kind of why I was like, I lose my train of thought. I know what it is. So, when we are asking for voluntary, is there a point at which, a tipping point where we have to say, sorry, this is mandatory?
Yes,
And where would that tipping point be?
Yes, related to the ongoing updates that we plan on providing, It's really about if PG&E pushes this June 8th date.
Understood,
If-
right.
As soon as we find out that that date is pushed to some date further down the road, we'll have to come back to this body and revisit, is voluntary good enough anymore?
Because it almost seems to me that voluntary isn't good enough now. I mean, that's just my own feeling. but-
She's asking for authority to implement this in 5 and 6.
I-
So one of
I saw that,
the
yeah.
challenges is that the reason why we are recommending voluntary only at this point is that if PG&E holds to their June 8th schedule, we will be fine. We will have some carryover issues, but as long as we're refilling, it will be adequate and we will not have to reduce deliveries. If we reduce deliveries now, when you reduce deliveries, it's going to impact people's agricultural operations in
Understood.
different ways.
Right.
You wouldn't want to do mandatory now and harm anybody's agricultural operation if it's not needed. So, because it's gonna happen either way if it was to go into place. So, we are more comfortable with a voluntary reduction. And then if June 8th starts to look like they're not going to be able to hold it, then we would recommend going to a mandatory.
Okay. Well, I think that, I appreciate having that explanation, because that's also a question I've been asked. It's like, well, so people don't have to do it if they don't want to. Well, I guess, yeah. And so back to these declarations, is somebody from NID working with our representatives, Kylie, and, our U.S. Senate? Are all of those folks involved and brought into this?
Yes,
So they
I
know-
have personally requested that Congressman Kiley also utilize his contacts with PG&E to just reiterate our concern that this project is expedited. And we're also teaming up with PCWA on messaging, so I know they're going through their channels as well.
And then what about, getting some sort of emergency money, if you will, from the county? I know that, we've brought the county into this discussion. Are they going to be able to be of any help to us with this?
Not that I know right now, as of right now, but I can definitely evaluate that potential.
Because they do have grant people that,
Yeah.
there might be a source of money for us to help with the pumping and the diesel fuel and all those things in an emergency. Their OES department. So someone from here is working with county OES or with?
We will coordinate with them. We've been
will,
coordinating
okay.
with the CEO's office currently.
Right. Okay, I think that's it for now. Thank you. I probably have more, but that'll do it. Thank you, everyone.
Patient. You had a question, didn't you? Go for it. I heard you want, I got more, but.
I'm wondering what happens with, so we'll have spring runoff, and will we be able to capture all of that water in the combination of our reservoirs plus Spalding?
So our lower country reservoirs, our Rollins and Spalding, we are capturing whatever runoff is available to us currently. Both reservoirs are full and spilling, so we're capturing all we can. As far as what will be coming in from Jackson Meadows and Bowman, they are anticipated that they will both spill when the snow melt occurs. We have nowhere to put it, unfortunately, because we have Spalding is inaccessible to us. We can't push it through the system. So we anticipate Jackson Meadows and Bowman to spill and go down the South Yuba River. Also, PG&E has informed us that they anticipate Spalding filling and spilling probably in the first week in April. So essentially that snowpack and runoff that we normally count on, at least for the beginning of the summer months, will be lost to us.
So then what is the impact then? We're gonna draw down Rollins and Scotts Flat more than we would have to. So what is our ability to refill those reservoirs once the system is repaired?
Also a great question. So we will endeavor to maximize our canals once the facilities are back online and attempt to refill as much as we can. The limitations on the canal systems, however, won't allow us to fully refill those reservoirs, the hole that was made by the end of summer. So we anticipate they may come back up a little bit or hold steady, but it's highly unlikely they'll fully refill.
So then we end up with, to revisit this based on.
I bet we'll be looking at this every 2 weeks, so hopefully
Definitely, I would anticipate getting a report every 2 weeks.
Mhm.
And
And if there's something in between, you can.
definitely, in the interim, we'll keep the board informed.
You know, Trevor, I too had the same question for Jennifer, and I sent it to her about, why are we in surplus? And, you know, it's like, shouldn't we withdraw our surplus declaration? And that was one of the first things I thought about. And she answered the question, and I get the answer. But I'm wondering, so we can then also demand out of Grass Valley, Nevada City, that kind of reduction, the 20%? And would that be voluntary, or would that be mandatory for them?
They are under the, whatever regulations we put in place for our own customer base, they have to match. And we've already reached out to both the city managers, and I believe we heard from both, indicating they're going to conserve with us.
And that's not true if we rescind the surplus. We could do like we did previously and give them 50%.
We could still do that now. Well, I did reach
That's not
out.
what he said. He said they had to match us.
So per our water agreement, that's what's in the water agreement. Any shortcoming or drought scenario, they will match whatever our conservation regulations are.
But we're
So-
doing voluntary 20%, so right now, you couldn't force them to take 50% less.
No, we would ask for the same allotment we're asking from our
This
customers.
is why.
Oh, so remember
We
that,
have more control.
they are using treated water, and the
That's right.
treated water
It's not
is a
as
lot
big
less
as-
water.
Right.
Well, and remember, it's not coming till June.
The city of Grass Valley is also, they're taking forward ordinance next week. So I'll get a copy of that draft
Oh,
ordinance.
an emergency ordinance for their, oh, good.
And I will do the same coordination with Nevada City.
If I could, add on to, or dovetail what Karen was talking about, the refill. This dovetails exactly with the conversation we had Thursday night about the constriction of South Yuba Canal and no storage in the mountain. Exactly the same thing.
Mhm.
So it's like, okay, now I'm back to laser focus for the long term on that one. And typically, Rollins and Scotts Flat both stay full until Labor Day or something like that. I mean, that's been the history of those two reservoirs, is that correct?
More so Rollins than Scotts Flat. Scotts Flat, by the end of the season, we've dropped it down about 10,000 acre feet, and that's typical. Rollins generally stays full because of the amount of imports we get from PG&E and our own reservoirs.
What's the dead pool level at Rollins?
Rollins hit 5,000 acre feet in the 77 drought, so basically a puddle.
Whoa. You can walk across. Oh, man.
Yeah.
So we keep talking about the June 8th date. What was the first date PG&E gave you?
The initial
Because
date.
we're acting like they haven't slipped the schedule.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. So, and that's why this escalated the way it did, quite frankly. The initial indication was, look, we lost Spalding 1, you're out of water supply for a time. We feel like we can make the repairs by April 30th. So in our book, that was, okay, we should have enough natural runoff by that point in time that we're whole, 100%, we're spilling. They did some analysis on their facility. They had to pump down their tunnel. They actually got personnel down in there to inspect it and found the damage much greater than they initially thought, and that's when they pushed that date out to June 8th. That's what escalated this whole thing.
So we're already in a 6-week slip from the original date.
Correct.
The original date was before they were able to get eyeballs on it.
Yeah. And I will say, we have implemented increased meetings with them. We're getting updates twice a week on their progress, and so we're hopeful that with that, we can, A, stay abreast on their progress, but B, also know if it's slipping so we can come back to you and make any changes we need to do to make further conservation efforts.
Okay, and then my last thing's more of a comment, I guess. I just find it irresponsible to continue to talk about voluntary curtailments when item 5 and 6 clearly are asking to give the general manager the ability to force curtailments based on worsening conditions. So I only feel comfortable rescinding the surplus declaration and at the same time instituting a truly voluntary 20% curtailment for whoever wants to do that. I think all the rest of it is very not founded in data, and that we probably won't have that data till closer to June 8th. So I would ask the board to modify the resolution and focus on the two things at hand. That would be my direction.
I'd like to go to public comment, and
Wait, he didn't get to answer the question yet. Or did
But
you?
you did.
Let's see, that's.
I know.
Well, my last question is totally a functional one at Spalding. If they had a low-level, release, that would go into the south tube and not benefit us, correct?
Correct. They also have one that can supply the South Yuba Canal normally, but we have been informed that that one's plugged.
Plugged?
Yes.
Yeah, so, we have a bunch of stuff going, okay, thank you.
Wait, I have one other thing I have to ask.
and
Is
we're
it
gonna come
possible?
back
Okay.
to
Okay,
board discussion.
then
here.
I'll forget.
Yeah.
Is it possible that we could send any of our staff to help PG&E, you know,
They're,
Mutual aid opportunity.
mutual aid?
If they want it.
yeah, if they want it, we're always happy to assist. They also have a contractor on board. They're moving full steam ahead.
So they're not gonna come back to, oh, we just couldn't get all the labor we needed to do X, Y, Z.
No, if that was the case, both us and PCWA would absolutely be there
Okay.
to support.
Yeah, we've been informed that they're operating 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Good, they need to be.
Shifts, yeah.
Okay, we're going to public
Sorry.
comment, and see Debbie getting up. I also have a direct question for Matt on, yeah, but if you get up and tell us, how long can you go without irrigating your grapes?
Did we get it?
Yeah, Debbie's going first.
I'm gonna go first, because I'm already here. So the answer about dead pool in Rollins, that was one of my questions, and, you said it was about 10,000 acre feet
So-
for dead pool, but what about considering the sedimentation, like how close, it sounds to me like we're gonna get there.
So we don't anticipate getting there by the June 8th deadline. If it goes beyond that point, that we run a real risk of getting there in July. As I mentioned before, the dead pool we hit in 77 drought was 5,000 acre feet, but our bathymetry studies show that we have had 11,000 acre feet lost to sedimentation. So 5,000 acre feet is really no longer possible. It's really around that probably 12 to 15,000 acre feet.
Okay, yes, so it's all red flags. And let me introduce myself, I forgot in the beginning, Debbie Kutinchi, representing Nevada County Farm Bureau. So I have questions from my farmers and ranchers. Once water conveyance is restored, we'll need to refill the reservoir as best we can. It sounds like we won't get full head on them, you know, with weather conditions, et cetera, et cetera. Is there any chance, you're gonna hear this more than once, not just from me, but if, you know, we get the water refilled, we have water availability, is there any chance of extending the irrigation system of the season to repair possible damage to hardwood crops? You know, because they will essentially have been in drought conditions probably from June through September. They're all gonna be stressed. And, you know, my farmers and ranchers wanna help NID as much as possible, but they don't wanna lose their investment either. So we're gonna that's been on the back burner as a possible restoration for them.
I appreciate the question. If you'll notice in the resolution, we actually pull back on fall water.
I saw
And
that.
the reason being is that we do have a concern that we will not be able to refill these to a point where we have adequate storage. So making any promise for additional waters late in the season is not doable at this point in time. If some of these target dates change, we may be able to update that. But as of right now, I wouldn't count on that, fall
Okay.
water.
Yeah, understood. All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Matt, you're up.
Matt Manuel, farm 35 acres of organic grapes down Bidney Springs. Rich, you have some questions?
So I see Purdue won the wrestling championship.
Not to my knowledge.
Is it?
Okay.
You went to Purdue, right?
Yeah.
Okay. How long? So you're getting irrigation water April 15th, normally.
Yes.
When do you start irrigating this year?
With grapes, it's, you want to irrigate early during bloom. So right now, we're actually seeing a really early, bloom right now, starting to bud out. So we typically, right when the water comes down the ditch, we supply our grapes. Yeah, we're a crop that takes water early. You want to get strong roots, your fertilizers in during the bloom, on all the way to fruit set, so that goes through.
And then you cut back at variety.
Yeah, after June, you really start cutting back.
Okay.
So, yeah, we need water early rather than the ranchers who.
And the ranchers right now are telling us maybe with continued watering, rain, they can go into June before they start irrigating.
Correct.
So this is something we can work with to conserve water on our end, just by knowing who needs water and who doesn't. Oh, yeah, the blood orange, it's got olive oil coming?
Yeah.
Okay.
You do have a hand raised.
Yep. Juan Brown? Welcome, Juan.
Hey, can you hear me now?
Yes.
I'm not a mouse. I see that up there. Okay. Juan Brown, Nevada County Airport, Grass Valley Air Attack Base. Chip, can you brief us on the Yuba Reservoir? The Grass Valley Air Attack Base is going to need water to make mud, to create fire retardant, to continue to operate throughout the season. I assume that the two emergency pumping stations, Anchor Lane and Siphon Lane, are downstream of the Yuba Reservoir. Does that mean the Yuba Reservoir will remain full and the airport will have water throughout the season, even if we pass this June 8th deadline?
Yeah, that's a great question, Juan. And yes, we do supply them. Really, their main connection with us is a treated water supply. It's like a 4-inch meter. That will not be affected. We will still be able to supply them with their needs. The Yuba Reservoir up there, Loma Rica area, will also stay generally full. That's what Siphon Lane Pump Station does. It pumps water from our DS Canal into the Cascade Canal, which then supplies the Yuba Reservoir.
Got it. Okay, thanks. And then do we know specifically what is it that failed up there at the Spalding #1? Was it the tunnel itself, or was it the exit of the tunnel, or is that considered critical infrastructure, energy infrastructure, and we can't talk about it?
I don't know if it's public information at this point in time.
You should probably err on the side of treating it confidential.
Yeah, critical energy infrastructure at this time. But it sounds like it doesn't relate to the issues that FERC was pointing out in earlier reports. It's something completely different.
Correct.
Great, got it. Thanks.
One of the publications details some of the damage.
Juan, thank you.
Great, no sweat, thanks.
You do great work up there. Yeah, don't, Papa.
So, the level of, Rollins, are we obligated to keep the Bear River from going dry? Have to feed some water into that system for, Comby and Camp Far West?
Yeah, that's a great question, Don. We do have an obligation to feed 5 CFS into the Bear River below Lake Comby at all times, and we will not falter on that. We will still make that obligation. On the Deer Creek side, as long as the South Yuba Canal is out, our in-stream flow obligation no longer exists. So there's no water to really put flow back into Deer Creek anyway, so we don't have to hit that target until the South Yuba Canal is restored.
So the Bear River will still have water, some water.
Have some.
Yeah. But Deer Creek will also flow some to Lake Wildwood to serve them.
So the portion of Deer Creek I was referencing is up in the upper watershed above Scotts Flat Lake. We have an in-stream flow obligation there that takes it into Scotts Flat. Below Scotts Flat Lake, we artificially we import our water into there to meet our customer demands down below. So Deer Creek will still have a pretty healthy flow below Scotts Flat Lake.
Thank you. Any more public comment? Public comment is closed. Directors?
I have going back to Trevor's point about the resolution, it seems that some of the items under 6, so we have A through F. It seems that some of those things, like A, are things that we are implementing now. And it seems that some of these things would be implemented should the timeline for repair of this system is extended. So, for instance, item B is not something that you would implement or we would implement until we knew that the deadline was being pushed out. Is that correct?
Well, it depends on how quick the natural inflow comes in on the Scotts Flat side, because remember, we're having to pump up into the Cascade Canal. The DS Canal has some capacity limitations, so there could be some need on the tar ditch to implement some of these measures prior to June 8th, but it's all weather dependent.
Well,
And that includes rotating.
I'm wondering if I'm just reading into your concerns that part of it is that the board is not involved in the decision-making of when these things are implemented, and that causes.
Let me ask her a question and I'll answer that.
Okay.
If we approve this, could you cut my water by 20% without coming back to the board? If conditions deteriorate?
Well, only based,
Yes, the answer is yes. You're asking for that authority.
So we're
I don't know why we're veiling it, just.
We're not veiling anything. There are going to be a need to implement some of these items now. We can do that, but some of these items may, especially on one particular canal, may need to be implemented earlier than if the date.
Then let's put that canal's name in there, so that you're not coming after my voluntary water.
You don't know them, you don't necessarily know them all at this point in time.
No.
I mean, if the board didn't want to delegate authority, you don't have to.
I don't want to delegate authority, I'm
So
making
you
it
can
very clear.
Just be prepared, we're gonna have to call special meetings.
Okay.
And that's fine, but we need 24-hour notice. Things are gonna rapidly change as the system starts drying out. Some canals, we may be perfectly fine with 20% voluntary. Others, we may need to enforce some kind of rotation. Others may need a different approach. So, that's what I would foresee. And by the way, I had a hand in.
My concern isn't with any of that, Dustin. My concern is the outward messaging is voluntary 20%. Call in, but nobody's reading this outside the people in this room, maybe a couple people on the phone. We're giving you a blank check beyond voluntary 20%, and nobody's saying that. So if you said, hey, we want voluntary 20%, but we're also going to ask for you to give the board's control to Jennifer to make decisions ad hoc for the next month or two, that should be the messaging to the public. That is very clear. That is not what's been portrayed to the public. So that's the problem I have.
So we're currently only asking for voluntary conservation. There are a couple of canals that we have concerns about that may need some of these more elevated items prior to June 8th. But we will not know that until it happens. It happens, and it's going to happen quickly. It has a lot to do with weather and water use. And so, but as Dustin said, if you're not comfortable, that's fine. This is very typical in an emergency situation to delegate authority. We will be doing every 2-week check-ins. There's no situation under which we'll arbitrarily come back and tomorrow and say, we're reducing everybody by 20%. That's just not going to happen. So if you're uncomfortable, then change it. We will have to call emergency meetings, and we got to be right. We have to be able to move very quickly.
So I would assume, Jen, that if you had to implement, let's say, rotation, everybody on that canal receives a notification well in advance, or
Correct.
as much in advance as you can.
Correct.
And that we have public outreach and press releases going out, website and social media.
But you, Karen, don't get to say no.
I think the reality is I wouldn't say.
Well, that could be, but I might.
There really isn't, when we're talking about these restrictions, there really isn't going to be an option. It's going to be, there is no more water.
Right.
That's part of the issue.
Right. Well,
Trevor,
I had a comment.
No, I'm voting no, so it doesn't.
Okay. Well, Trevor, you know, I want to,
Let's just get it over with.
yeah, I want to acknowledge really, truly, because when I read especially 6B and C, you know, I wrote, oh my God, and wow, all over
And
this.
then you talked to Jennifer, she convinced you that it wasn't, oh my God.
No, that is actually not true. That's insulting, so I would like to
I
not say
apologize,
that.
I said that.
Yeah, that is not true. I said, wow, these are very onerous, you know, words on a piece of paper. And yet, you know, I also see that we are in a situation where it could change. I mean, you know, PG&E could do something else stupid, and it could further exacerbate the problem. And if that happens, she or somebody here has to act like that. And to assemble a board and have a public meeting, you know, I guess where I'm headed is I'm comfortable in doing that because I trust our staff, and I trust Jennifer, and I trust that they will do this in the very best interest of our agricultural community, which is really what we're really talking about here. You know, our treated water people, it sounds to me like they're going to be okay no matter what, but we're really talking about the ag people. And I really trust our staff that they will do the very best that we can do under the circumstances we've been handed. And so that's, you know, I just want to say, I had the same reaction as you did when I read it. I was freaked out.
I will point out, resolve paragraph 7 memorializes the approach that is proposed. Actions taken by the general manager pursuant to this resolution will be reported to the board of directors at the next available board meeting. If the board would like to enhance that or bolster that, we can. I mean, we can even say that, for example, that actions taken by the general manager that result in some kind of mandatory type action will require prompt ratification at a special meeting. So,
right. See, I think that's good. We'll prompt an emergency meeting of the board of directors to review or something.
There's like 10 things that would need to change for me to vote yes on this, but that would be an improvement.
Yeah, I would just recommend regular ratification as opposed to the special meeting. Or we put in.
Well, but our meetings are every 2 weeks.
Yeah, Jennifer's saying that time is up to you.
right.
I know, but I guess what I'm saying is if we're gonna get together and look
It's
at.
difficult to get everybody together
It is
on
hard.
very short notice.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I'm saying.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
You know, I think this is an emergency situation.
Mhm.
I have complete confidence in the management team to make the decisions required in the best interest of our customer base, and I have no doubt about that. And I don't think myself as a board member I'm gonna ever be in a position to know better than this management team. And I will stand behind that.
I agree that, I agree.
So I want to be informed, I want to know what options exist, what decision-making you went through when you're looking at these issues, but I do not want to be pulled up your actions when they're required.
Wouldn't we modify 7 to require ratification by the board at the next available, and the general manager will notify the board in writing within 24 hours of taking action?
That'd be
And
better.
typically, you would know before.
Yeah.
Because you're getting emails all the time.
Yeah,
Right.
that would be better. I think that would at least bring us more fully into the fold
In
of
most
what's
situations, I would contact you before
Right.
we did anything.
Right.
I do try to be sensitive.
Well, I
when
think
you're
you're
going to
great
get
about
phone calls as soon as we do something, so,
You need a couple of minutes to write that, correct?
no.
Well, she'd write it out.
Um,
We-
While you're writing it, can we undo the surplus water agreement? Resend the surplus water agreement? Then I'll vote yes.
I want to say, I did not freak out reading any of this because of the emergency nature of this, and the gravity of it besides. That, and as far as delegated authority, I too, have complete confidence in the ability of the staff to do the right thing. And so I'm not in favor of changing any of these, emergency declarations or actions that need to be taken.
I think it's fine also to specifically state that the surplus declaration is hereby withdrawn via this. I don't
But it's
see-
not, they're not
But
proposing
that-
that.
I would not
He's
recommend.
saying we can add that.
Oh, if you add that, I'll vote yes.
I don't know that, well, so it's just, it's a,
Nuance.
well, it's a nuance of bureaucracy.
Right.
So we are still needing to serve water to Grass Valley, Nevada City. They are treated water customers. A 50% reduction on a treated water system is extremely difficult because they use so much water. So you're trying to take half of a much smaller pie water.
Smaller pie, correct.
So what we did instead of rescinding it is we took away the other items that are included in this surplus declaration, additional water, fall water, increased water. So it just holds, unfortunately, we sometimes get in these bureaucratic things that they don't exactly line up very well. So if we were going to also rescind the surplus declaration, we would then have to amend this again to have some exemption for those two cities. So we're doing the same thing, we're just doing it in a different way. Either way is messy.
I don't agree with
Every
any.
time we talk about Grass Valley, Nevada.
And it is, it's a challenging situation.
We can give water to those two cities at whatever percentage we want if we rescind that. It may not make
I
Jennifer's
don't-
life easier or dealing with the two cities, but we have more control if we do it than if we don't.
I don't know I don't know from a legal perspective that we can do that, so we would have to look into that water supply agreement, which I have not read in its entirety for probably over a year, so I'm not comfortable with doing that on the fly.
So that's one of my questions is voluntary 20% versus public health and safety percentage. Is there a fixed percentage on that? I didn't think there was.
No, and there's not a fixed percentage on public health and safety water, and it's also, it would go down to indoor water use. We'd have to do a lot of digging to figure out what that amount of water is. Treated water systems are easier to get them to respond, but they're not gonna be able to make a huge dent in the amount of water. 50% is very difficult for them.
That's a real.
Chip always says it's a
Yeah.
drop in the bucket.
I'm not comfortable with supporting, addressing what percentage they would get or not without doing some.
And I think we also need to recognize since 2013,
They already
there's
have.
been a huge
Yes, yes.
savings already,
That's a really good
reduction.
That is correct.
Yeah, so we're kind of,
Well, then just be
Not
clear,
dealing with the
nobody's
water.
saying not give them water. It's have more control over what we do come June, which I've been told is when they start taking water. The same date we're waiting for PG&E.
Well, how about this? What if we we'll go back and look at the contract more carefully, speak to the two cities, have a better understanding of what they're using, what they've already reduced since 2013. And then if there is a potential to rescind the surplus declaration and have some type of other action, then we'll bring that forth at the next meeting, so it's more well-baked.
I think that's fine. You know, that works for me. I agree with you, Chris. You know, given the huge gravity of this situation in the emergency, this is unprecedented, right, in the world of NID water. Has this ever happened before? Both arteries are compromised? I don't think so. So I'm very comfortable with the resolution as it is, and I agree with Karen. I have complete confidence in our staff to run this and do the best you can. And I know that each and every one of you guys has best interest of our agricultural community customers in first and foremost. I'm fine with this resolution as it is.
So I heard some desired edits to result, section 7. Would you like me to read what I heard and what I'd propose for consideration?
and then I'll hold my comments.
Okay. So it would now read, actions taken by the general manager pursuant to this resolution will be reported in writing to the board of directors within 24 hours and also reported publicly to the board of directors at the next available board meeting. And then a new sentence. Any curtailment actions that require mandatory compliance by NID customers will require ratification by the board of directors at the next regular board meeting. Reporting to the board of directors under this paragraph will continue for the duration of the emergency.
That's really good. That's really good.
But that, as I heard it, Dustin would require then that a curtailment would not occur until a board meeting?
No, a curtailment, a mandatory action would require ratification by the board.
So they can
So we do it.
We vote post,
We vote, yeah.
You could unwind it.
but we've seen how difficult that is with the surplus water agreement.
If people feel good about that, that's
It,
fine. I
it's
mean,
much
just-
better.
Yeah.
I'm more amenable to that.
Excellent.
Nice linguistics.
So I also have extreme confidence in our staff to marshal this through. You guys, you do a heck of a job for us, and thank you, and for this community. And I just wish the community would know how hard you, and how much heart you put into this. You do an incredible job, and it really means something to you. And, thank you for that. Hang on. Farmer, we had this conversation with Antonio yesterday. What are we going to plant? We need to know now. Actually, we needed to know last December when we looked like we were in surplus water. Seeds were bought, fertilizers purchased, ground dedicated to different crops. It's not a small production. And so yesterday, I brought up the fact that, hey, they have to think of water, drought-resistant crops more than the normal crops you're going to plant. And so we had a pretty good talk about it, and it was, what are they? When do we need to plant them? And he said, well, I can hold off 1st of May, maybe to the end of May of this crop, but it's certainly before the June 8th deadline. So for me, moving from a voluntary to a mandatory is not going to work. I'd rather be mandatory today. And so that know exactly kind of what we can have for June, July, August. So we know the season of the crop, we get it to harvest. Worst case scenario, we run out of water 1 month before harvest. And we're down, he's down tens of thousands, I'm down the same. The food community doesn't get their food supply. And then the second thing that is kind of in the back of my mind is we're moving from an El Nino to a La Nina. And I'm not as confident in a La Nina situation that we're going to refill our reservoirs for next year. So I'm of a mind of, let's keep those reservoirs as full as we can this year, not draw them down as much as we would under a voluntary situation, but start biting the bullet today so that we have a chance of having a little more reserve going into next year. It's not going to do us any good to have to blow our water this year. So
I want to comment on your
yeah.
I agree with you 100%. However, this is a damned if you do and damned if you don't situation. And we do this today, then as the water flows, then we can rescind it.
We can
But
rescind it.
we're still going to, no matter what we do today, the raw water community is going to come back either way. And I don't know which one is worse right now, right? Because the conservative viewpoint of saving water is valid. I have the however, though.
Is it not true, though, that, Rich, to your point, that we're going to be notified, and this is like it happening in real time, and if things go down a road and it's looking worse, 2 weeks or 3 weeks from now, we may move to mandatory. It's like we always have that option open to us, and it doesn't have to be today. I mean, I came in here wanting it mandatory and just like, but, I'm hearing I'm wrong.
So what's the deadline? What's the drop dead date that we kind of have to know things? Well, things were being planted already for transplants. Everything's transplanted out. So
Right.
all the crops that are going in right today have a relatively short 2-month growing season. But the crops that are going to be transplanted next week and will go into the soil in May, those are 5 months or 4 or 5 months growing season. And that's the crop we don't want to lose. And so if we do, maybe within a couple of weeks, whether or not to make the decision voluntary or not, that would work, but we're right up against the deadline.
I too share a real concern about not only this year, but next year. Not being able to refill is a huge issue, obviously, and I don't think we want to, I think we have to be realistic about a downside protection for next year. So I'm sympathetic to that view. And I would like to just reiterate that if a person does a voluntary reduction now, and we have a mandatory reduction that comes in a month like May, when the reduction of that mandatory is applied on the original purchase level, not the reduced.
Yeah, correct. That's how we would apply it. All of our calculations were based upon previous year usage, so anything off of that is benefiting.
Okay. I'm just going to throw a caveat in that something Jennifer and I talked a lot about and presented, is that we're in a better shape than most people because we have a pond. We have a buffer.
Yeah. Oh, God.
The what?
What you're talking, Paul.
No,
No, that's, and we're already thinking of digging one this summer.
Yeah. So that pond has given us a lot of buffer, a lot of flexibility. And particularly after October 15th, we don't need that shoulder fall water because we have the pond. It'll get us through into the winter, and then good for winter crops too. So I just wanted to put that in there. But we're still faced with this deadline of what crops to grow. Can we reopen public comment? I think so. Huh? Yeah.
You're the chair, if you would like to do that.
Hit that gavel. We want to hear from all good ideas.
Well, it sounds like flexibility is the most important thing, and being able to operate according to the conditions. I'm wondering if you wanted to save water, depending on what the conditions are through April, whether you could, put off the, beginning of the raw water season until, May 1st.
So, good question. I'll take a quick stab at it, but essentially, as I mentioned earlier, all of our reservoirs, especially our lower reservoirs, are full and spilling. And so we have enough capacity right now to fire up the systems, wet up the canals with natural runoff.
Oh.
And so we might as well use it while we have it, is our theory right now. And putting off the irrigation season, that water would just be lost to us anyway. It would spill over the reservoirs and down through the river system. So.
Hi again, WTTG Farm Bureau. This may be early to ask about this, but I know at my board meeting it's gonna come up. Voluntary versus mandatory. The implementation of that is really difficult to switch to mandatory. You're talking about changing orifices or leaving the orifices as they are and leaving people at the end of the ditch with no water, because the people ahead of them are going to take the water. So I think it's really difficult, correct me if I'm wrong, to make mandatory restrictions right now. You know, if you do voluntary, it may pay out. It may not, but then you can move and, you know, then you're gonna have the cost and, you know, oversight of, you know, you guys have to make sure that, you know, person A takes what they're supposed to take and leaves the person Z at the end with water. I mean, you guys already know this, but it's sort of a nightmare to do mandatory. So, do you have any answers for me? Come visit my board, or people are calling my office.
We're happy to come speak to your board, Deb.
Okay.
No, and what she said is correct.
Mhm.
It's,
Absolutely.
I do not feel that the position that we're in right now substantiates going mandatory, and it also dovetailing on to what Deb's
Right.
comments just where she is
Good
accurate.
We will declare something you can't enforce, right?
Right. So I think, our recommendation still stands as voluntary.
Chip, could you tell us how many hours, how many dollars it takes to change everybody's box?
Oh,
I
it,
can tell you 300,000.
yeah,
That's the number, yeah.
it's substantial, and it takes a lot of time to do so.
The staff that already have other jobs.
Right, so I believe any sort of mandatory reduction, obviously, we would have discussions about it, but probably more than likely would involve rotations or shortcutting of the season, something like that. That's for a discussion for another day. I hope we don't have to get there.
Thank you.
Thank you. And your next board meeting is Wednesday, April 3rd,
Coming right up.
6 o'clock.
I'll be there.
Hi, my name is Michael Taylor, and I want to just appreciate just observing your board, how feisty and talkative.
Italian, some of them.
No, I mean, it's really, I mean, I go up and watch the board of supervisors, and it seems like decisions are already made when they come out. You know, you don't have this feisty conversation. So I just wanted to appreciate seeing it and understanding that you guys are working this way. I'm with you. It seems to me that we're already at a point where there's no extra water. I mean, to me, it seems crystal clear that even at best case scenario, that if we are able to get water turned back on in June, the two reservoirs that are most important in Nevada County aren't going to be filled back up. So it seems to me you're already at a point that there is no extra water to be sold. I just want to point that out.
Very astute.
Well, Chip, I'd like you to, can you respond to that?
Sure, yeah, no, it's a great comment, Michael, and a great concern, one that we have as well. But I can assure you, we ran the numbers, we ran the scenarios. We are fairly comfortable with the June 8th deadline. If it is hit, our reservoirs will be a little lower than we normally see, but we are pretty confident we can make delivery to our customer base. Now, Rollins is going to be much lower than average, and we understand that. Scotts Flat, not as much. Keep in mind, we won't be bringing as much water over from Jackson Meadows and Bowman because we can't. So as soon as that conduit opens up to us, we're going to take as much water out of that upper watershed reservoirs and bring it to the lower as rapidly and as much as possible. PG&E in the past has really limited the South Yuba Canal during the winter months for winter operations. We will maximize that now that we own a portion of it. We will pour the coals to it to try to fill these up as fast as we can. So again, if we are able to hit that June 8th target date, we feel like we will be able to sustain deliveries for the rest of the season.
Great. What I was bringing up was more of the benefits to Nevada County for its recreation and people coming to the community to use the lakes recreationally.
Got it.
So that's where it sounds to me that the lakes will not be filled back up, so there isn't a surplus to support the county with having recreation use of those two lakes.
Yeah, that's a great point. Thanks for bringing that up. I do believe Scotts Flat boat ramps will stay in water throughout the duration of this. It will stay full enough. It won't affect it. Rollins, however, we anticipate will go to a low point that the boat ramps will be high and dry and exposed. And Monica and her team are already reaching out to those folks to inform them.
Can we get in and take sediment out? Opportunity.
You can go look at it, that's not sure.
And the boat ramp. Yeah, so Rollins definitely will suffer on the recreation side, and there's really, I don't think, any way around that one.
And so one thing we haven't talked about, sorry to keep this going, but not sorry. Is for what if, the worst case scenario, what if the June, I'm sure you guys have talked about this, what if we miss that, then what do we do?
And we're back having more discussions here about mandatory reductions.
But you're gonna have a kind of a real-time update. Supplies didn't come in. They're gonna have to hit some milestones along the way according to repairs.
Correct.
Yeah. so
We'll have a good
kinda
idea.
know
They're
the-
working 24 hours a day. They're running 24-hour shifts at Spalding. So we're keeping close track of it, as well as we are able to monitor in real time the in-stream flow coming in from the recent storms. So
The other variable that's big in all this is rain.
Right.
The more rain we get, the less our customers need and use, and the more we store. So, that's also a very large variable. I will openly admit that our forecasts are very conservative, and I think rightfully so. But the more rain we get, the more we bolster these numbers.
How is this approximating, how does this line up if we ever got into 55% unimpaired flows? This kind of a model that even comes close? I know
It's
you-
a totally different conversation because we're
Right.
not being able to use that for reservoirs, so it'd be difficult to compare at this point.
So it doesn't have any correlation?
Not really.
So a kind of a related question is on the environmental flows that we have been doing in the Bear River have been higher than what's mandated under our FERC license. Not always, but frequently, and I'm wondering how that might change with this condition.
Below Combi is really our main Bear River in-stream flow requirement. And I think we're pretty accurate about continuing our 5 CFS in the Bear River. I don't think we deviate from that much at all. The section between Rollins and Combi, I think, is probably more what you're referencing. And that really is based on the demands of our customers. And so the flows from Rollins to Combi in the Bear River probably won't look drastically different than those folks have seen in the past, because the flows that are in there are just there to meet our customer demands.
Okay.
Closing public comment? Directors, any more comments?
Well, I'm ready to make a motion, Mr. President.
Fire away. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you. So I would move, please, that this body approve resolution number 2024-10, declaring a water shortage emergency, authorizing extraordinary water conservation rules and regulations, and authorizing emergency response activities and projects as contained within the resolution.
As modified.
Yes, thank
As
you.
modified. Do you want to read the
As
modification?
modified, Item 7 of the resolution. Thank you.
I can.
You want me to read it?
Sorry, I went back to the title page. So, resolved paragraph 7 would now read, actions taken by the general manager pursuant to this resolution will be reported in writing to the board of directors within 24 hours and also reported publicly to the board of directors at the next available board meeting. Any curtailment actions that require mandatory compliance from NID customers will require ratification by the board of directors at the next regular board meeting. Reporting to the board of directors will continue for the duration of the emergency.
So I would include that modification to item 7 in my motion.
I second it.
All right, Chris, roll call.
Division 2?
Aye.
Division 3?
Aye.
Division 4?
On behalf of the Nevada Irrigation District, ratepayers and tax contributors, I vote no.
Division 1?
Yes.
Division 5?
Yes. Passes. So, general manager report.
I have nothing new to report. We've been a little bit busy. Yeah.
She's been reporting.
She's been reporting.
What's going on, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, board of directors reports.
Yeah, on my way to reporters, I attended the Nevada County Farm Bureau meeting this the month. I did report, changed it today. Good.
And my report is that I have been spending an enormous amount of time answering constituent concerns around this very emergency issue. And I think this is an appropriate response at this time. It may take something more.
Great discussion.
Yeah, and a good discussion. Thank you, everybody.
Karen.
I attended the Placer and Nevada County Farm Bureau meetings in March, and I met with Placer County Supervisor. I had an observation about the NID crop report and changes to water order that I just wanted to raise. Personally, I received this notice after the return date, so it would help, I think, if we back that up a bit. And then I noticed that in the application schedule for, pesticides and herbicides, I guess it's herbicides, that some of the application dates are actually at or very near the, end of the irrigation season. So I wanted to understand better, what's the strategy around these applications? There's also a huge variability between applications in different canals. And I just thought as an agenda item, it would be helpful for us to understand this, because that herbicide application is a very sensitive issue to organic farmers and others who have concerns about herbicides.
Possibility? Agendize that?
Yeah, sure.
Excellent.
Just congratulations to Rob Tucker, who took the Supervisor District 2 spot here, our classmate. He won it in the primary, which was nearly impossible with 4 or 5 people running against you. So good job, Rob. He'll be great for South Nevada County.
Well, I also attended the Farm Bureau meeting in Nevada County. Good meeting. Then on Monday, Jennifer and I attended a meeting that the county put together with Congressman Kevin Kiley, and it was all about agriculture and water. And correct me if I'm wrong, I thought we got a great response on the proposal to get federal help through the USDA for ponds on ranches and farms. Actually, he came back afterwards and said, well, we're gonna go with it, see how far he can take it.
It was a great meeting.
Yeah. That will give all of us some flexibility and storage and solve quite a bit of some problems for NID. Really will help. So that being it, we'll now have public comment on items to be considered in closed session. None. Public comment is closed. We have a readout maybe on a closed session.
I do not expect one.
Okay. The open session is now closed. We'll take a 5-10 minute break. We'll be back 11 o'clock.